Winter returned with an unexpected level of force as New York and Ohio were once again struck by one of the most disruptive snowstorms in recent memory. What began as a quiet, cold morning quickly turned into a full-scale weather emergency as the first flakes fell around 3 a.m., thickening hour by hour until the entire region disappeared beneath a deep, blinding sheet of white. The cities that never sleep suddenly moved with hesitation and uncertainty, slowed by the weight of a storm that few had anticipated would grow this intense. Visibility dropped almost nothing in parts of Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx, as fierce winds cut to the streets and made temperatures feel far more brutal than the actual readings. By midday, the National Weather Service confirmed that between 20 and 35 centimeters of snow had accumulated across Manhattan, with some northern neighborhoods surpassing 40 centimeters, numbers not seen in nearly 5 years. Emergency alerts were issued, major highways were closed, and city officials pleaded with the population to stay indoors. Across Manhattan, the vibrant morning rush was replaced by long, empty avenues. Subways halted, buses slipped along icy roads, and hundreds of flights at LaGuardia and JFK were suddenly canceled. Inside the terminals, stranded passengers formed endless lines as airlines scrambled to reorganize schedules. The storm had come faster than expected, and the city was paying the price. Experts explained that the chaos came from the collision of two powerful systems, a surge of cold Arctic air from Canada and a fast-moving low-pressure system sweeping in from the Midwest. The meeting of these air masses created perfect conditions for heavy snow, biting winds, and rapidly deteriorating visibility. Meanwhile, in residential neighborhoods like Queens and Brooklyn, the storm became a test of endurance. Cars were mobilized, sidewalks vanished, and residents waded through knee-deep snow. Most small businesses chose to remain closed, and public schools that had hoped to open were forced to retreat to online classes. Firefighters and police officers responded relentlessly to emergencies. Fallen trees, power outages, minor crashes, and blocked roads, all while the storm continued to intensify. The situation was no better in neighboring New Jersey, where Interstate 80 became the site of one of the morning's most dramatic accidents. A box truck, unable to brake on the icy road, skidded violently and struck a guardrail, triggering a multi-vehicle pileup involving more than 10 cars. Emergency responders described it as one of the most dangerous rescue operations they had faced recently, worsened by fading visibility and blowing snow. Further west, Ohio was hit with equal severity. Snow began falling before dawn, quickly intensifying and exceeding meteorological predictions. Columbus, Cleveland, Toledo, and Akron were buried beneath 15 to 30 centimeters of snow, with some areas surpassing 35 centimeters thanks to lake effect bands that strengthened the storm. Offices shut down, universities canceled classes, and roads became treacherous as snowplows struggled to keep up. Interstate 75 near Dayton became another disaster zone when a sedan lost control and triggered an 8-car pileup. Emergency crews battled dangerous conditions as they worked to extract victims. Thankfully, no deaths were reported, but officials insisted that the situation could have been far worse. Similar incidents unfolded throughout the state, including a tractor-trailer derailing along Interstate 70 near Zanesville and several vehicles sliding off frozen roads in southern Ohio. Despite the widespread chaos, some residents tried to make the most of the situation. Children playing in parks, families using the unexpected break to stay warm together indoors. But beneath that temporary calm, the storm served as a stark reminder. Winters in the Midwest and Northeast demand respect. Yet, even as the snowfall slowly eased, meteorologists issued an unsettling warning. This storm was only the beginning. A second, potentially more dangerous weather system was forming over the northern plains, and it was moving fast. While New York and Ohio were still struggling to recover from the paralyzing storm that had blanketed streets, shut down airports, and pushed emergency services to their limits, meteorologists began issuing a new and far more unsettling warning. Satellite imagery revealed a vast, spiraling mass of cold air sweeping down from the Canadian Arctic, moving faster and deeper than expected. It wasn't just another storm. It was a system with the potential to rival the most historic winter events ever recorded in the region. By late afternoon, weather centers across the country were on high alert. Forecast models started aligning in a troubling pattern. The second storm would merge with leftover moisture from the first, forming what meteorologists called a double-core winter cyclone, rare, unpredictable, and potentially devastating. Across New York City, the consequences of this prediction began to surface almost immediately. Crews that had been clearing sidewalks and tunnels since dawn were told to prepare for another 12 to 18 hours of intense snowfall. Salt reserves were running low, plow operators were exhausted, and emergency shelters, already filled with stranded commuters, started receiving additional beds and blankets. In Manhattan, the sky turned an ominous gray. The wind, which had momentarily calmed, picked up again with a violent howl that echoed through the narrow avenues. Pedestrians who dared to venture outside felt the sting of icy gusts cutting through layers of clothing. Electronic billboards lit up with emergency alerts, warning residents of a potentially life-threatening weather development. At the same time, in Brooklyn and Queens, residents tried to prepare for round two. Hardware stores ran out of shovels. Gas stations formed long lines as people rushed to fill their tanks before roads became impassable again. Grocery stores were overwhelmed. Shelves emptied of bread, water, batteries, and non-perishables within hours. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, teams working to clear Interstate 80 were suddenly told to halt operations. The storm clouds forming to the west were arriving sooner than expected. The temperature dropped sharply, freezing what had begun melting earlier in the day. Tow trucks, still removing the vehicles from the earlier pileup, began sliding on the hardening ice. State police declared sections of the highway unsafe, forcing an abrupt shutdown that stranded hundreds of drivers at nearby exits and rest stops. Ohio, too, braced for impact. The first storm had barely subsided when meteorologists announced that the approaching system carried even more moisture, an unusual development for the region. Lake Erie's winds intensified, amplifying snowfall in Cleveland and Akron. The Ohio Department of Transportation mobilized every available plow, and the governor declared a state of emergency across multiple counties. In Columbus, the storm's second wave arrived with frightening speed. By early evening, visibility plummeted again. Drivers stuck on Interstate 70 watched helplessly as sheets of snow blew across the asphalt like rolling white fog. Many abandoned their cars and sought shelter in nearby gas stations or diners that remained open specifically to assist stranded motorists. At airports across the Midwest and Northeast, chaos erupted. Cleveland Hopkins International suspended all operations. At John Glenn Columbus Airport, planes were diverted, and terminal halls filled with passengers sitting on floors, wrapped in coats and blankets, watching weather updates on their phones with growing anxiety. In New York, JFK and LaGuardia, already dealing with massive delays, announced a complete shutdown for the rest of the night. But the most alarming development came around 9:30 p.m., when a sudden drop in pressure caused a rapid intensification at the center of the storm. This phenomenon, sometimes called bombogenesis, transformed the system into a powerful blizzard capable of producing hurricane-force gusts. And that's exactly what happened. Wind speeds doubled in less than an hour, whipping snow into near-horizontal sheets that made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Large branches snapped. Power lines shook violently. In some areas of New York and Ohio, transformers exploded in bright blue flashes, plunging thousands of homes into darkness. Emergency dispatchers were overwhelmed. Reports flooded in of stranded families trapped in their cars, roofs sagging under the weight of accumulating snow, elderly residents stuck without heating, fires triggered by electrical malfunctions, multiple new pileups on major highways. In downtown Cleveland, firefighters had to navigate snowdrifts taller than cars to reach an apartment building where the heating system had failed. In Queens, a row of small shops flooded when ice blocked drainage systems, forcing owners to break through frozen doors to salvage what they could. Yet, amid all the chaos, something even more troubling emerged. Meteorologists noticed a third, smaller system forming behind a massive cyclone, one that could potentially feed into the existing storm, prolonging it even further. They didn't want to alarm the public yet, but internally they knew this wasn't just a two-part storm. It might evolve into a multi-day winter catastrophe, unlike anything seen in decades. For millions across New York, New Jersey, and Ohio, the night was far from over, and as the storm strengthened, The question was no longer how long it would last, but what kind of destruction it might leave behind.